When we talk about speed on land, we are really talking about a negotiation between biology and physics, between muscle power, skeletal geometry, heat, friction, and time. No animal embodies this negotiation more cleanly than the cheetah, not because it is merely fast, but because it sits at the very edge of what is mechanically possible for a terrestrial vertebrate. At full sprint, a cheetah reaches 29 to 31 meters per second, or roughly 104 to 112 kilometers per hour, 65 to 70 miles per hour. That number is impressive on its own, but raw speed is only the surface story. What makes the cheetah extraordinary is how briefly and precisely it can access that speed. A cheetah's maximum velocity is sustainable for only 20 to 30 seconds over a distance typically less than 400 meters before heat buildup, lactic acid accumulation, and oxygen debt force shut down. This tells us something important. Speed on land is not limited by muscle strength alone, but by thermal management and metabolic recovery. To understand why cheetahs dominate the modern speed hierarchy, we need to think in terms of stride length times stride frequency. Cheetahs excel at both. Their flexible spine acts like a loaded spring, compressing and extending with each stride. At peak sprint, the cheetah's spine flexes so dramatically that its hind feet land ahead of where its front feet had been just moments before. This allows stride lengths exceeding 7 meters, enormous for an animal that typically weighs only 40 to 65 kilograms. But speed is not just about going fast, it is about surviving the consequences of going fast. Each foot strike at full sprint can generate ground reaction forces exceeding 2.5 to 3 times body weight. The cheetah's semi-retractile claws function like running cleats, increasing traction while minimizing slip-induced energy loss. Its oversized nasal passages, lungs, and heart enable rapid oxygen intake, while a long tail acts as a dynamic stabilizer, countering angular momentum during sharp turns. From a physics standpoint, cheetahs operate near the upper bound of terrestrial locomotion efficiency. On land, drag forces increase linearly with speed, but internal stresses, bone strain, tendon load, joint shear, scale faster. Past a certain threshold, additional speed does not merely risk injury, it guarantees it. This is why no land animal, past or present, has evolved to be dramatically faster than a cheetah without paying catastrophic costs elsewhere. This also reframes an important misconception. Cheetahs are not the strongest land predators, nor the most durable, nor the most adaptable. They are specialists, optimized for one narrow performance envelope, short distance, high-speed pursuit of medium-sized prey in open terrain. In evolutionary terms, the cheetah is not a generalist apex predator, it is a precision instrument. As we begin this journey through Earth's history, across extinct predators, ancient herbivores, and the shifting constraints of gravity, atmosphere, and ecology, the cheetah will serve as our baseline. Not because it is the fastest thing to ever live on land, but because it represents the clearest expression of what speed means when flesh, bone, and physics all agree, briefly, before demanding a stop. In the next segment, we will place the cheetah within a broader evolutionary framework, asking a deeper question. Why did speed evolve at all, and under what environmental pressures does extreme speed actually make sense? Extreme speed does not emerge randomly in evolution. It appears only under very specific ecological conditions, and when it does, it almost always signals an arms race, a feedback loop between predators and prey where neither side can afford to slow down without consequence. Speed is costly. It requires lightweight skeletons, elongated limbs, powerful fast-twitch muscle fibers, high cardiac output, and nervous systems capable of coordinating motion at fractions of a second. These traits compete directly with others' strength, endurance, armor, reproductive investment, and injury tolerance. As a result, natural selection only favors extreme speed when the environment consistently rewards it. The first requirement is open terrain. Dense forests, swamps, or rocky ground punish speed by increasing collision risk and limiting sight lines. High-speed pursuit only makes sense where animals can see each other at distance and accelerate without obstacles. This is why the fastest land animals, both predators and prey, are overwhelmingly associated with grasslands, savannas, steppes, and semi-arid plains. The second requirement is visual hunting and evasion. Speed is most effective when both predator and prey rely heavily on sight rather than ambush, scent, or endurance tracking. In such systems, detection often occurs early, turning encounters into contests of acceleration and maneuverability rather than stealth. The third requirement is medium-sized prey. Very small prey can be captured without extreme speed. Very large prey cannot be safely taken down by sprinting predators alone. Speed specialists, therefore, tend to target animals in a narrow mass range, large enough to be worth the energy cost, but small enough to be overpowered quickly once caught. This is where speed becomes reciprocal. Fast predators select for faster prey, and faster prey select for even faster predators. Over millions of years, this feedback loop drives both sides toward physical limits imposed by muscle contraction speed, tendon elasticity, and skeletal strength. Importantly, this process does not favor endless improvement. Once both predator and prey approach those limits, further gains become marginal and dangerous. Fossil evidence suggests that this kind of speed arms race intensified during the late Cenozoic, particularly after the expansion of grasslands roughly 20 to 10 million years ago. As forests retreated and open habitats spread, cursorial, running adapted, mammals diversified rapidly. Limbs lengthened, toes reduced, spines stiffened or became elastic depending on strategy, and body mass concentrated closer to the center to reduce rotational inertia. However, speed evolution is asymmetric. Prey species benefit from early acceleration and endurance, while predators benefit from peak velocity and maneuverability. This asymmetry explains why many prey animals, such as antelope, cannot match a cheetah's top speed, but can often outrun it over longer distances or force it into failed chases through zigzagging escapes. Crucially, extreme speed almost always comes at the expense of resilience. Fast animals are more prone to skeletal stress fractures, muscle tears, overheating, and fatal missteps. Evolution tolerates this only when the survival advantage during successful chases outweighs the mortality cost of occasional catastrophic failure. This helps explain why Earth has produced very few true speed specialists, despite billions of years of terrestrial life. Speed is not a dominant strategy, it is a conditional one. It flourishes only when landscapes are open, prey is alert, encounters are brief, and the margin between success and failure is measured in milliseconds. With this evolutionary logic established, we are now ready to move backward in time. In the next segment, we will leave the modern savanna and ask a provocative question. Were there faster land animals before the cheetah? And if so, what stopped them from being even faster? If the cheetah represents the modern ceiling of land speed, the natural question is whether that ceiling was ever higher in the past. After all, Earth's history includes periods with different atmospheres, climates, continents, and ecosystems, conditions that might seem more favorable to extreme locomotion. The fossil record gives us partial answers, but also imposes important constraints. For most of terrestrial life's history, speed was not the primary survival currency. During the Paleozoic and much of the Mesozoic, land ecosystems were dominated by dense vegetation, swampy lowlands, and fragmented habitats. Large animals moved through forests, floodplains, and fern-covered landscapes where visibility was limited and footing uncertain. In such environments, speed offered diminishing returns. Strength, size, armor, venom, and ambush strategies were far more effective. This begins to change only gradually. The rise of flowering plants in the Cretaceous reshaped terrestrial environments, but even then, true open grasslands did not yet exist. Most large herbivores and predators were still adapted for power and reach, not sustained sprinting. Large theropod dinosaurs, for example, were formidable predators, but their sheer mass imposed hard biomechanical limits. Even the most cursorial theropods likely topped out at speeds far below modern sprint specialists, constrained by bone stress and the energetic cost of accelerating multi-ton bodies. Speed, in the cheetah sense, requires a very specific body plan, relatively low mass, long distal limbs, reduced digits, elastic tendons, and a spine capable of rapid flexion. These traits appear only sporadically in deep time, and almost never together. The Cenozoic era, beginning after the dinosaur extinction 66 million years ago, marks a turning point. Mammals diversified rapidly, exploring new ecological niches left vacant by extinct reptiles. Yet even here, extreme speed did not appear immediately. Early mammals were small, generalized, and often nocturnal. Their skeletal structure favored agility and concealment over outright sprinting. It is only with the expansion of open habitats that the evolutionary pressure towards speed intensifies. As climates cooled and dried during the Miocene, forests retreated and grasslands spread across multiple continents. This environmental shift did something crucial. It increased encounter distances. Predators and prey could now see each other from far away, transforming ambush encounters into pursuit scenarios. Even so, the fossil record shows that early cursorial mammals were still slower than modern equivalents. Their limb bones were longer than forest dwellers, but not yet optimized for elastic energy storage. Their joints retained greater rotational flexibility, improving stability but reducing efficiency at high speeds. Evolution was still feeling out the trade space between speed, durability, and control. One might ask whether higher atmospheric oxygen levels in the past could have enabled faster animals. While oxygen concentrations have indeed fluctuated, peak oxygen levels occurred long before large, fast-running vertebrates evolved. Moreover, oxygen availability is rarely the primary bottleneck in sprinting. Muscle contraction speed, tendon elasticity, and skeletal stress limits dominate instead. What emerges from this evidence is a sobering conclusion. There was no golden age of superspeed in Earth's past. The constraints that limit cheetahs today, bone strength, tendon recoil, neural coordination, and heat dissipation, also limited ancient animals. Different eras favored different solutions, but none escaped the fundamental physics of flesh and gravity. The cheetah did not replace a faster predecessor. It arrived at a moment when ecosystems, prey behavior, and body size converged to allow speed to matter more than ever before, and then push that strategy as far as it could reasonably go. In the next segment, we will examine the fastest living land animals beyond cheetahs, comparing their strategies, and revealing why none quite cross the same velocity threshold, despite impressive adaptations of their own. When we step back from the cheetah and survey the modern landscape, something immediately becomes clear. Speed has multiple solutions, and most of them do not aim for absolute peak velocity. Instead, evolution tends to favor combinations of speed, endurance, stability, and survivability. The cheetah sits at one extreme of this spectrum, but it is not alone in pushing land locomotion toward its limits. Consider the fastest prey species of today's open environments. Animals like pronghorns, springbok, and Thompson's gazelles routinely reach 80 to 95 kilometers per hour, 50 to 60 miles per hour. Not quite cheetah fast, but astonishing given that they can sustain high speeds far longer. The pronghorn, in particular, is often described as overbuilt for its current predators. Its cardiovascular system, lung capacity, and endurance far exceed what is necessary to escape any living North American carnivore. This tells us something subtle but important. Top speed is not always selected downward when pressure relaxes. Traits like endurance and efficient oxygen delivery remain useful even when the original threat disappears. In this case, pronghorn speed is widely interpreted as an evolutionary echo, an adaptation shaped by extinct predators that no longer exist. Other fast land animals take a different approach. Ostriches, the fastest bipedal runners alive, can reach 70 kilometers per hour, 43 miles per hour, and maintain high speeds over long distances. Their strategy emphasizes stride efficiency and stability, not explosive acceleration. Long tendons store elastic energy, while their upright posture reduces lateral motion, conserving energy across kilometers rather than seconds. Predators other than cheetahs rarely chase speed at the same intensity. Wolves, African wild dogs, and hyenas rely on endurance pursuit, gradually exhausting prey over distances far longer than a cheetah could tolerate. Their top speeds are lower, typically 55 to 65 kilometers per hour, but they trade velocity for durability, teamwork, and recovery capacity. This contrast highlights a crucial point. Speed is only one axis of performance. Peak velocity is impressive, but it is also fragile. A sprinter's musculoskeletal system operates near failure thresholds. Tendons must absorb and release enormous forces. Joints must withstand repeated high-impact loading. Muscles must contract at maximum power output with minimal margin for error. Animals that approach cheetah-level speeds without specializing fully tend to do so briefly and cautiously. Even the fastest horses, bred selectively for speed, rarely exceed 70 kilometers per hour, and only under controlled conditions. Despite their mass and power, their limb bones face severe stress at higher speeds, increasing fracture risk dramatically. What separates cheetahs from these other fast animals is not just speed itself, but how much of their biology is sacrificed to achieve it. Cheetahs have reduced bone density, limited muscle endurance, weaker jaws, and lower aggression compared to other large predators. They are more vulnerable to injury, kleptoparasitism, and environmental change. Their success depends on precision and timing rather than brute dominance. In evolutionary terms, this makes cheetahs exceptional, but also precarious. Most lineages avoid this level of specialization because it leaves little room for error. Natural selection generally prefers strategies that work most of the time, rather than strategies that work spectacularly but briefly. This brings us to a deeper question, one that stretches beyond living species. If modern animals already brush against biomechanical limits, could extinct animals, under different conditions, have done better? In the next segment, we will examine the most controversial candidates, fast-running dinosaurs and prehistoric mammals, and what physics tells us about their true capabilities. Few ideas capture the imagination like the thought of dinosaurs sprinting across prehistoric plains at impossible speeds. Popular culture often portrays large theropod dinosaurs as relentless, high-speed hunters, scaled-up analogs of modern pursuit predators. But when we step away from spectacle and examine the physics, the picture changes sharply. The central constraint is mass. Speed scales poorly with size on land. As animals get heavier, muscle cross-sectional area, and therefore force, scales roughly with the square of body dimensions, while mass scales with a cube. This mismatch means that larger animals face rapidly increasing difficulty accelerating and decelerating without exceeding the strength limits of bone and tendon. Large theropod dinosaurs, even the most lightly built among them, weighed hundreds to thousands of kilograms. At those masses, every step at high speed would generate enormous ground reaction forces. Bone stress does not increase linearly with speed, it increases disproportionately. Beyond a certain threshold, skeletal failure becomes not just possible, but likely. Trackway evidence supports this. Fossilized dinosaur footprints provide direct clues about gait and speed. When scientists analyze stride length and footprint spacing, the inferred velocities for large theropods consistently fall into the range of 20 to 40 kilometers per hour, with upper estimates occasionally pushing higher, but still nowhere near cheetah territory. Importantly, these estimates already assume optimal conditions and healthy individuals. Even smaller, more gracile dinosaurs face constraints. While some mid-sized theropods had relatively long legs and narrow bodies, they lacked the flexible spine that is central to mammalian sprinting. Mammals rely on spinal flexion and extension to dramatically increase stride length. Dinosaurs, with their more rigid torsos and different hip mechanics, were limited primarily to leg-driven locomotion. There's also the issue of muscle physiology. Mammalian sprinting relies heavily on fast-twitch muscle fibers capable of rapid, powerful contractions. While dinosaurs were active animals, their muscle composition and tendon elasticity were likely optimized for sustained movement and balance, not explosive acceleration. Some researchers have suggested that smaller dinosaurs, roughly the size of modern ostriches, may have achieved impressive speeds. This is plausible, but even in these cases, estimates tend to cluster around 60 to 70 kilometers per hour, comparable to fast modern birds, not exceeding the fastest mammals. What emerges is a consistent pattern. Dinosaurs were not slow, but they were not built for extreme sprinting. Their evolutionary success came from size, strength, reach, and metabolic efficiency, not from pushing the absolute limits of land speed. This realization also clarifies why the cheetah has no true prehistoric dinosaur analog. The cheetah's speed arises from a very specific combination of low mass, extreme spinal flexibility, elastic tendons, and reduced structural redundancy. Dinosaurs, especially large ones, occupied a fundamentally different region of the biomechanical landscape. In the next segment, we will shift away from dinosaurs and focus on prehistoric mammals, some of which came surprisingly close to modern speed specialists, and may explain why today's fastest prey animals seem, in a sense, over-prepared for threats that no longer exist. When dinosaurs vanished and mammals rose to dominance, they did not simply inherit the Earth, they reshaped it. Over tens of millions of years, mammals experimented with body plans that dinosaurs never explored, especially when it came to speed as a primary survival strategy. This period, particularly from the Miocene into the Pliocene, may represent the closest Earth ever came to producing land animals that approached cheetah-level performance across multiple lineages. Unlike dinosaurs, mammals brought several key advantages into the speed equation: flexible spines, elastic tendons, and highly differentiated muscle fibers. These traits allowed mammals to store and release energy with remarkable efficiency, converting muscular force into forward motion with minimal waste. As open grasslands spread across continents, mammalian evolution leaned hard into cursorial designs. Among the most important players in this story are extinct North American predators such as large, long-legged amphicyonids and early members of the cat family that were more lightly built than modern big cats. These animals did not surpass cheetahs, but some likely rivaled modern fast predators in short bursts. Their limb proportions suggest adaptations for speed rather than ambush, and their reduced body mass would have lowered skeletal stress during acceleration. More revealing, however, are the prey species these predators hunted. Fossil evidence shows that many Miocene and Pliocene herbivores, early horses, antelope-like ungulates, and camel relatives, had extraordinarily long limbs, narrow distal bones, and oversized respiratory systems. These are not the traits of animals merely trying to be fast enough. They are the traits of animals shaped by relentless pursuit pressure. This leads to a striking conclusion. Many modern prey species appear to be over-engineered for speed relative to today's predators. The pronghorn is the clearest example. Its sustained speed and endurance exceed what is necessary to escape any living carnivore in North America. This mismatch strongly suggests the presence of an extinct predator, or predators, that imposed far greater selective pressure than wolves or cougars ever could. Candidates include fast-running, cheetah-like cats that once roamed North America, as well as large pursuit predators that combine speed with endurance in ways no modern species does. These animals are gone, but their influence lingers in the bodies of the prey they chased. Yet even here, we do not find evidence of animals decisively faster than cheetahs. What we find instead are ecosystems pushed to the edge of the same biomechanical limits we see today. Prehistoric mammals may have filled the speed spectrum more densely, with multiple species clustered near the upper boundary, but the boundary itself appears unchanged. This tells us something profound about evolution. Limits matter more than opportunity. Even when selective pressure is intense and time spans millions of years, land animals cannot escape the constraints of gravity, material strength, and heat. In the next segment, we will explore those constraints directly, examining the absolute physical limits of land speed and why no amount of evolutionary pressure can push animals far beyond the cheetah's performance envelope without breaking something fundamental. By this point, a pattern has emerged. Across modern ecosystems and deep time alike, land animals repeatedly approach, but never decisively exceed, the same upper speed boundary. This is not coincidence. It reflects a set of hard physical limits that no amount of evolutionary pressure can bypass. The first and most fundamental constraint is ground reaction force. Every step a running animal takes pushes against the ground with a force several times its body weight. At sprint speeds, these forces spike sharply. Bone strength does not scale fast enough to tolerate unlimited increases. Past a certain point, bones fracture, joints fail, or tendons rupture. Evolution can optimize shape and material properties, but it cannot rewrite the basic strength limits of biological tissues. Closely tied to this is limb contact time. As speed increases, the time each foot spends on the ground shrinks dramatically. That means the same amount of force must be delivered in less time, increasing peak stress. This creates a trade-off. Longer contact times reduce stress but limit speed. Shorter contact times enable speed but threaten structural failure. The second constraint is muscle contraction velocity. Muscles can only shorten so fast while still producing force. Beyond a certain speed, muscles simply cannot generate meaningful power, no matter how well supplied with oxygen or energy. Tendons help by storing elastic energy, but even the best biological springs have limits to how quickly they can load and unload without damage. The third constraint is stability and control. At extreme speeds, even tiny deviations in foot placement or body alignment can cause catastrophic falls. Neural signaling delays, measured in milliseconds, become critically important. An animal moving at 30 meters per second covers nearly half a meter in the time it takes a nerve impulse to travel from limb to brain and back. This forces reliance on pre-programmed motor patterns rather than real-time correction, increasing injury risk. Then there is heat. Sprinting generates enormous metabolic heat in a short time. Unlike endurance running, where heat can be dissipated gradually, sprinting overwhelms thermal regulation systems. Body temperature rises rapidly, and muscle efficiency drops. This is why the fastest animals can only maintain top speed briefly, regardless of fitness or conditioning. Taken together, these constraints define a narrow performance envelope. Push harder in one dimension, speed, and something else gives way. Durability, endurance, recovery, or survival probability. Evolution does not reward animals that win a single race, but die soon after. This explains why land speed has plateaued across millions of years. The cheetah is not fast because evolution stopped trying. It is fast because evolution found the edge and stopped there. Any further increase would produce diminishing returns and rising mortality. It also explains why speed specialists are rare. Most animals occupy safer regions of the performance landscape where small gains in speed do not come with catastrophic trade-offs. The cheetah is exceptional precisely because it lives so close to failure. In the next segment, we will explore a provocative counterfactual. If biology is so constrained, could different planetary conditions, gravity, atmosphere, terrain, produce land animals that run faster than anything Earth has ever seen? Once we accept that cheetahs sit near the physical limits of land speed on Earth, the question naturally shifts outward. If evolution is constrained here, are those constraints universal, or are they artifacts of Earth's specific conditions? To answer that, we need to imagine how gravity, atmosphere, and terrain shape what fast can even mean. Start with gravity, the most unforgiving variable. Earth's gravity sets the weight that bones and tendons must support with every step. Lower gravity would immediately reduce ground reaction forces, allowing limbs to strike the ground with less stress at higher velocities. In such an environment, longer strides could be achieved safely, and skeletal failure thresholds would be reached later. However, lower gravity comes with a trade-off. Reduced downward force also reduces traction. Without sufficient friction between foot and ground, acceleration becomes difficult. Animals might be able to run fast once moving, but they would struggle to push off effectively or change direction. Extreme speed without control becomes useless or lethal. Now consider atmospheric density. A denser atmosphere increases drag, which seems like a disadvantage, but it also enhances aerodynamic stability. More air resistance can help dampen oscillations and stabilize motion, particularly for long, flexible bodies moving at high speed. It also improves heat transfer, potentially allowing faster animals to shed sprint-generated heat more effectively. Conversely, a thinner atmosphere reduces drag but worsens heat dissipation. Sprinting animals would overheat even faster than cheetahs do today, shrinking the already narrow window for peak performance. Terrain matters just as much. Earth's fastest runners evolved on relatively firm, flat ground with consistent traction. Softer substrates, sand, mud, loose soil, absorb energy and punish speed. Harder, more elastic surfaces could theoretically return more energy per stride, much like a track surface does for human sprinters. But evolution does not get to choose its racetracks. Animals must perform across varied, unpredictable ground. When all these factors are combined, the picture becomes clear. Even on a hypothetical Earth with slightly lower gravity, denser air, and ideal terrain, maximum land speed might increase, but not dramatically. Gains would likely be incremental, not revolutionary. The same biological constraints would reassert themselves: muscle power, neural timing, and tissue strength. In other words, Earth is not especially bad for speed. It is simply honest. It allows land animals to approach the edge of what living tissue can endure, but no further. This realization reframes the cheetah yet again. It is not merely the fastest runner of its ecosystem, or even of Earth's history. It is a data point revealing where biology consistently breaks down under extreme demands. In the next segment, we will return from speculation to reality and examine why cheetahs themselves are so vulnerable despite their unmatched speed, and what their fragility tells us about the cost of pushing evolution to its limits. From a distance, the cheetah looks like evolution's triumph, a creature seemingly perfected for speed. But up close, the story becomes more fragile. Every adaptation that allows a cheetah to run faster than any other land animal also reduces its margin for error. Speed, in this case, is not a free advantage. It is a debt that must be constantly paid. Cheetahs have lightweight skeletons with thinner bones than other big cats of comparable size. This reduces rotational inertia and lowers the energy cost of swinging limbs at high frequency, but it also makes them more susceptible to fractures and joint damage. Their muscles are optimized for fast twitch performance, sacrificing endurance and raw strength. Compared to lions or leopards, cheetahs are physically weaker and far less capable in direct confrontations. Their claws, unlike those of other cats, are only partially retractile. This improves traction during sprints, but exposes the claws to wear and damage. Over time, this reduces their effectiveness not just for running, but for gripping prey. Even their teeth and jaws reflect compromise, adequate for suffocating medium-sized prey quickly, but poorly suited for prolonged struggles or bone-crushing bites. The cardiovascular system of a cheetah is extreme even by athletic standards. During a sprint, heart rate can more than double, breathing rate skyrockets, and body temperature rises dangerously fast. After a chase, cheetahs often require long recovery periods, during which they are exhausted, overheated, and vulnerable. Many successful hunts are lost not to escape, but to kleptoparasitism, as stronger predators steal kills from cheetahs too tired to defend them. This vulnerability is not accidental. Evolution did not design the cheetah to dominate ecosystems. It designed it to win races often enough to survive. In stable environments with open terrain and abundant medium-sized prey, that strategy works. In fragmented landscapes, dense cover, or regions with high predator competition, it fails. This fragility also explains why cheetahs are rare in the fossil record and unusually sensitive to environmental change. Their evolutionary path leaves little room for adaptation. Slight shifts in prey availability, habitat structure, or competition can push them past viability thresholds. Unlike generalist predators, cheetahs cannot easily pivot to new strategies. Seen this way, the cheetah is not evolution's end point, but its warning label. It shows us how far selection can push a trait before the supporting system becomes unstable. In the final segment, we will step back and integrate everything we've explored, modern biology, deep time, physics, and ecology, to answer the overarching question: why the cheetah remains unmatched, and why Earth is unlikely to ever produce something meaningfully faster on land. When we assemble the full picture, physics, biology, ecology, and deep time, the cheetah's position becomes clearer and more striking. Its speed is not an accident, nor is it merely a quirk of modern ecosystems. It represents a convergent endpoint, a point that evolution approaches repeatedly, but never meaningfully surpasses. Across Earth's history, land animals have explored many pathways: size, armor, venom, intelligence, endurance, cooperation. Speed has always been one option among many, but it is also one of the most constrained. To run extremely fast on land requires a narrow set of conditions: open terrain, visual hunting, medium-sized prey, and brief encounters. When those conditions exist, evolution pushes towards speed. When they fade, speed retreats. What makes the cheetah special is not just that it is fast, but that it exists at the intersection of all those conditions simultaneously. Its body mass is low enough to avoid catastrophic skeletal stress, yet high enough to overpower prey once caught. Its spine is flexible enough to amplify stride length, yet stable enough to maintain control. Its muscles, tendons, lungs, and heart are tuned for a single task: short, explosive pursuit, without pretending to do anything else particularly well. Importantly, Earth has given evolution ample time to do better, if it could. Mammals have dominated terrestrial ecosystems for over 60 million years. Grasslands have existed for tens of millions. Predator-prey arms races have played out again and again. And yet, the upper bound of land speed has remained stubbornly consistent. That persistence tells us that the limit is not historical, it is structural. This also reframes the question of whether something faster might one day evolve. The answer is almost certainly no, at least not in any meaningful sense. Small marginal gains might occur under ideal conditions, but they would come at disproportionate costs in durability, survivability, and reproductive success. Evolution does not chase records, it optimizes survival across lifetimes, not moments. The cheetah endures not because it is invincible, but because it is precisely balanced. It lives close to failure, yet not beyond it. That balance is rare, difficult to maintain, and easily disrupted, but when it holds, it produces the fastest thing flesh and bone can manage on land. In that sense, the cheetah is less a champion than a measurement. It tells us where biology, under Earth's gravity and atmosphere, finally says, no faster than this.